Welcome to another episode of Dr. Kamini Rao's Masterclass.
It would even be wrong to say I created anything. I would look at it as I was an instrument through which things happened. And you're desperately wanting to learn as much as you can when such wonderful people are teaching you. You're always thinking that you shouldn't miss anything. You can't miss a murmur here, you can't miss something there, because he knows that you're useless, right? He's not even had a mustache. He's not even a doctor. They know that. I don't think I may be a good speaker, but I don't think I understand Swamiji. If I can believe that I gave a speech, I have not understood Swami Vivekananda. I said I'm going to resign. And you say, what is this? And then you remember her. And I knew where she was living, a small little room in Palace Guttali in Bangalore. I went and met her. She told me, I'm so happy to see you. I'm dying of cancer. All I knew of her was as a teacher, she would give money and pay fees of so many poor children. She was a spinster. She was devoted to children and education. And she told me after retirement, I don't know who the children are who needs my money, so I have saved 6,000 rupees. I was living with the fear and worry that I'll die with the 6,000 rupees. Now I'm glad I read about you. I want to give it to you. That's why I wanted to meet you before I die. Such wonderful people, whether it's a millionaire or a small person. And I am reminded of what the Paramacharya of Kanchi told me. I used to go sit at his feet for a long time. And he one day called me and said, in your life there'll be a lot of people who will give you ₹1,00,000. But you must have the courage to say no to one man giving you ₹1,00,000. And this sort of resonates with what we just told a little earlier. He said, you must take 1 rupee from 1,00,000 people. Yes. He said, then if you take money from one man, ₹1,00,000, only 2 eyes are watching you. But now 200 eyes will watch you, make you more accountable, more transparent. I'd rather you have 200 eyes watching over you. So I think when you have such extraordinary people guiding you and sort of urging you on, and when a message from Vivekananda flows, you suddenly find society supports you in various ways. So my guru told me, the day you get corrupted, the way you abuse public money, that is the day society deserves to stop supporting you, and it will stop supporting you. And I am convinced of it.
Yeah, but the fact is sometimes it becomes so late. The society keeps on supporting, whether it is the judiciary or whether it's the political system. They wake up very late, and by that time damage is already done. And unfortunately in our country, for anything to sort of wake up, public policies have to change. And for public policies to change, or for any law to change, it takes a lot. So I understand from your biodata, you have been a Rhodes professor, and you've also been to the Cornell University, and you've actually been, you've done your, fellowship in the leadership programs, and you also train corporate CEOs. How did you get into this?
It's again another incident. I know my life is about storytelling, and so these are incidents which remind me the messages of Swamiji all the time. It was very early when I actually had this very painful incident in my life, which got me to challenge the notions of human development. I remember 87, I went into this tribal area, and no tribal patients were coming. When you're 21, 22, you're hungry for patients. You want something to validate your existence as a doctor. You want them to, right? You want them to come to you and say, hey, please save me, hey, do something for me. And I found tribals didn't care a damn. They had their own traditional medicine, and they just saw me as a nuisance. I was living in a small hut amongst them. And one day I heard there's a lady in labor. I was thrilled because I loved obstetrics, and I said, if I can conduct the delivery of that person, and knowing tribals, I knew most of them, as a young MBBS doctor, I could do.
Who did you train under?
Professor Kaulgud.
Oh, he is a fantastic
legend. You learn your values, your ethics.
Yes.
Kaulgud himself for me was special because as a student, when I was doing all this, in the ward one day, he was talking about a patient who was severely anemic, a pregnant woman who was severely anemic, and all his PGs standing around him. I still remember there's a doctor called Dr. Anita Kestur, who was a PG at that time. She was standing beside me. And Dr. Kaulgud was there, and he was talking about this patient not responding to treatment. I simply burst out. I said, Professor, it's not about not responding to treatment. Please find out whether your treatment is actually medicines for the patient. And I remember Anita whispering in ears, Mugitu nin kate in Kannada, you're finished. and Kaulgud looked at me and said, who's that? He thought, who's that impudent voice kind of attitude? And he asked me, can you explain what you just said? Then I explained to him this malignant hypertension patient which I had seen in medicine, and the same story I told him. And I said, this woman I have found out, her husband was working in the KR mills in Sidlingpura. It's shut down, locked down over the last 3 years. She has no source of income because her husband has no money. This is the 7th pregnancy. I saw her sharing her food with 3 other children with her. So what are she's getting? How will her anemia improve? She's not able to buy any of the medicines we are writing for her. And Kaulgud was shocked. And then he called me aside to his office. And he said, he showed me his almiras and said, these are all filled with samples. I don't give it to anybody because I don't want people to think I'm selling medicines. This is my key to my office. You are welcome anytime, empty them, distribute it to all the patients you want. Until he died, I had his key. Till at least as long as I was a professor, he died later on. And I would go to his room, take the samples and distribute. So it was a privilege for me to learn under such extraordinary people. And he never did private practice till he was in government service. Yes. A wonderful human being. So this patient, I had this young woman, I thought I can go deliver her. I go there, she was 14 years old. That was my first shock. One side of me was, those days tribals didn't have structured marriage. They just live together, have sex. If they get pregnant, they get pregnant. This girl had got pregnant and they accepted it. For them, premarital sex was not taboo. So it's just normal for them. And I thought, oh, great opportunity, high risk pregnancy. If I do good here, society
you get accepted.
Yeah, complete acceptance. And the father was Yajamana. So all the more reason for me to be sure. I examined her, being a primey, she's just early labor. I thought tomorrow 24 hours, all good. I told me it will take 24 hours. Don't worry. So I went back. Early next morning I went. I still remember Sani Madanahadi was the name of that colony. It is named after the Yajamanas. Her father was Sani Madaya. On the way, one of the tribal women asked me, where are you going so early? Because it's the Project Tiger area, Project Elephant area. So you can either get trampled or eaten. So I told her I'm going to go deliver Madi. And she laughed and said, you don't have to go. A child was born last night.
Oh.
I was very disappointed. I said, why couldn't this child follow a textbook? Why didn't it wait 24 hours? I could have showed I'm God. Now I'm gone. No opportunity now. But I still remember Kaulgud's message. He said, no, birth canal is not a clean space. The child could get, eyes could get infected. Go put some genticin eye drops. At least put gentian violet on. Those days we actually had gentian violet.
I know.
Now we don't get gentian violet on the umbilical stump. So I thought I'll do that. I went to this tribal colony and I still remember that small little hut. Standing outside the hut, talking to that, I knew I could hear her walking inside. So I knew she's inside. Her father had gone to get firewood from the forest to boil water for the baby. And I said, come and show me the baby. She refused. 5 minutes of negotiation didn't work. 10 minutes later, I got angry. I said, here I am, a young doctor, nearly topped my university, and now she doesn't even take me, show me the baby. So in anger, I screamed and said, if you don't come out and show me the baby, I'm going to come into your house and see the child anyway. And her scream changed my life. She screamed and said, please don't come in. I got nothing to wear. This young 14-year-old woman, 40 years after so-called political freedom for this country, 1987 December, she had delivered her own baby and placenta, soiled the sari she was wearing, only sari she had. She had washed it in the middle of the night, put it on a hut, was waiting for the sun to come out, dry to wrap herself again. So I felt, if this is the India that we have built after 40 years, what country are we living in? That is when I realized it's not medicine that people need. Something deeper, I have not understood it. And we call this human development. So I thought maybe building hospitals and schools is the answer. I thought I can make sure these Madis don't happen. So that's what I did. For the next 10, 15 years, I built hospitals, schools, colleges, and I thought it solves the problem. It didn't. That's when I realized this is also not the answer. Then I got a certificate program in public health from National Institute of Health. Then I thought I have answers in public health. To some extent it had answers. Then I thought this is not enough. And I always believe that universities and formal education can teach me shortcuts to make things better. So I went to BITS Pilani, did my MPhil in health systems management. I thought you solve the health system, you can solve it. 10 years later, I looked back and said, have I really solved anything major? Have I really understood human development? So these questions were so troubling. I thought, let me go to the Mecca of human development teaching. So I went to Harvard, the Kennedy School, studied there, did a couple of fellowships, and I realized they don't have answers. But what Harvard gave me was a better way of asking questions. And like Swami Vivekananda says, he says education is embedded within us. It is the manifestation of our own divinity, our own perfection, that's education. So Harvard gave me better ways of asking questions, but the answers were within me. And I had to explore them. So that day I realized it's not about health, it's not about education, it's not about building airports, roads, toilets. It's about building human capacity. Like Vivekananda says, this is man-making, character building. That's what we need. And I started fashioning a theory of change. I said, how do we build human and social capital? How do you constantly expand human capabilities, like what Amartya Sen says, but specifically in the areas of the physical, the cognitive, the emotional and the spiritual. And when you build human capital like this, and you build social capital of people, they'll have powerful economic consequences. So my journey of human development started maybe 15 years ago, but crystallized 10 years ago. And today I see this as my life's mission now, to promote an understanding in everybody that it's not just a $5 trillion economy. Those are not what we should aspire for. What we should aspire for every Indian in this country, to have adequate human and social capital. And the $5 trillion economy will happen as a consequence.
So it's not about the defense, it's not about so many other things that we are spending on, because if we look at the kind of spend that we do on health, it's woefully inadequate.
Completely.
And if you're looking on the social infrastructure that is actually built, I sort of get amazed, Balu, the way in which you have built these institutions in HD Kote as well, and a place like Bandipur. It must not have been easy, because getting electricity connections there, water connections there, I think the bureaucracy and everything would have killed you. The bribes could have killed you, because the parallel economy that runs along with the actual fees to be paid is so efficient there, without paper, without anything. It runs absolutely smoothly. And so if you are going to do this, and having Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement as a kind of banner there, it will be a little bit difficult for them to ask, but they are quite shameless, they will still ask. And you have got this thing that we will not ask, so then they'll keep on giving you one excuse or the other. So how long was this delayed, and how did you manage to get all these permissions?
It's a great question in my view, because we all imagine that it's easy to do all this, good work will get supported. That's true. But I remember again in one place Swami Vivekananda says, and this is a message for all young people who aspire to do this, we have to prepare ourselves for that. He says good work has to go through 3 stages. First is ridicule. People ridicule and say, what can this young man do? What can these people do? And after that, if you still persevere, and if you still do what you believe in, then they'll put opposition in your way. The next phase is opposition. We'll see how we'll do it. So things have happened. Like I said, we've been beaten up, been arrested. All this is part of your life. But then Swamiji says, if you still continue to do what you're doing, then finally comes acceptance. Even to sit here, it's a privilege, and this is because you accepted this kind of work that's happening around the country, and this has to be known to more people. So ridicule, opposition and acceptance happen. But for that, he says, you have to keep your mind on the 3 P's. He says purity, patience and perseverance. So we have to prepare ourselves, that purity of thought, word and deed. And even if people ask you for that bribe, you're full of that conviction that you will say, come what may, because then honesty is not an honesty of convenience. It becomes a honesty driven by conviction. And when you show that kind of fire within you, eventually people will say, anyway, this fellow is not going to give, let me get his job done. Or you'll always find a good Samaritan who says, at least now let me do a little good, I'll take the bribe from the others. I've had this kind of experiences. I've had even politicians tell me this, saying that, well, we also need to get our punya somewhere, so we'll do it here. They have unashamedly tell that also. So I think once you stand by what you believe in, and you demonstrate this at every level, and you don't compromise, because once you compromise, once you take one step, then you're lost. It's painful, it can delay, but when you go to bed at night, you can answer the question, I valued my values today. If you value convenience, if you value shortcut, then you feel frustrated. But if you value the values you live in, these are all the tests in which you can demonstrate the conviction. So I look at it that way. It is painful, it's not easy. Many times I have felt, should I really go through this? Am I really justified that people's work is suffering now? I'll give an example. 14 of our tribal women, many of them are children in our own school and who grew up and literally brought up by all of us. And these women became entrepreneurs and set up a food processing unit. It took us 18 months to set it up. Ease of doing business are slogans, but these women took 18 months. Electricity connection 6 months. Panchayat giving you permission 4 months. If we had given those bribes, it may be 3 days and half an hour and all these things happen. But then 18 months later, when you look back, you're proud because the women now feel very proud that they did this without a single rupee bribe. And
So-
they tell me.
What was this now? This was like a self-help kind of group?
No, these are women who are members of a self-help groups, several self-help groups. They have a federation. The federation realized that some of these women are so poor, they have no land, they can never get out of poverty. So we said we have to do a land-based income generation activity. So people grow ragi, and these women buy the ragi, process it. So these are very simple things. We eat uri ittu in Karnataka. They make the uri ittu in their thing, neatly packet it and sell it. They sell it online on Amazon everywhere, and they have huge business. They make ragi embedded chikkis. So chikki is just groundnut and jaggery, but they put popped ragi into it. So it gets calcium, it gets fiber, it gets all the rich nutrients that we talk about. So we make health foods, energy bars like chikkis and stuff like that. And so these women are today earning, and they own the factory, they own the unit. And we are spreading this across the locations, run and managed by women entrepreneurs quietly. And the pride is because they can stand up and say, we did it our way. I think that itself is worth it. So there are challenges, there are problems. And to go back to something I want to add to your earlier question, I couldn't complete it, is this story of this young woman delivering also taught me that if you want to make a real difference, you can show one demonstrator example in a small project. You can build one class hospital, one top class school or college. That's not going to change this country. This country can change only when you embed this kind of thinking in the policy makers and in politicians. And that's how the second institution was GRAAM, the Grassroots Research and Advocacy Movement, where you do policy research, you understand what policies work, what don't work, and try to see it from the lens of the community, the voices of the community, and tell back the policy maker, this is not working, or you can make it work better. So when you bring change in policy, millions of people benefit. Now I can serve, Vivekananda Youth Movement touches the lives of only 3 million people, but India is 1.3 billion people. We need to bring change in a macro level. And that change, whether we like it or not, is only through politics and policy. And that's how my life in policy making started.
So I also know that being an author, both of these books are very, very popular of yours. But there's even one more, which is more popular, I, the Citizen. And this is one book that has also been taken into the curriculum, in Harvard. Now, what does this book actually teach? Because what happens, I have seen, and my experience with the Western type of education is it's very theory based, and they take examples from everywhere, but then they sort of look at it from a learning perspective, but hands-on experience, getting their hands dirty, they don't have. India has a lot of resource material, but they don't have the flowery language, nor that they can do it in the kind of project reports like what they do. So if these two can be put together, I think it will be wonderful. So you need to be recognized in Harvard before people in India can recognize you. So if you say you are a Harvard graduate or something like that, people say, wow. Why? I mean, I don't think that that is required at well, because you've done so well over here. So I feel somewhere along the line, this kind of foreign crony capitalism should actually stop. We have enough of people who are doing fantastic work, and that's the entire thing of Kamini Rao's masterclass. Looking at people, bringing them to the forefront, because this show is so popular that hopefully many more people will join your movement because of your books, as well as the kind of work you're doing, and many hands make light work. So I would like you to explain that book, I, the Citizen.
I, the Citizen is basically a book told in story form, exploring the world of unraveling the power of citizen engagement. See, you said it so beautifully. This master class is an initiative of a citizen. Let's for a moment remove Dr. Kamini Rao from the picture. Let's look at her as a citizen. Her one act as a citizen of this country, passionately believing that India has got a lot to offer, and bring out these hidden gems, hidden diamonds, and tell the world that they are diamonds. That is citizen engagement. That is exactly I, the Citizen, because you are functioning as I, the Citizen. And you don't see it as Kamini Rao. Kamini Rao doesn't require this master class, but the citizen in Kamini Rao requires it. And she does it as an obligation of citizenship. I, the Citizen is anecdotes of ordinary people whom society dismisses of as ordinary, but demonstrating extraordinary acts of citizenship explaining and exploring the world of human development, policy making, fight against corruption, everything through these lenses of people. And all are lived experiences of mine over 3 decades. I had the good fortune of having lived it. The book itself starts off with an example from Sahibganj, a distant, small little district in Jharkhand. As one of the consultants to World Bank, I was reviewing a project of theirs there, and I met this little tribal woman. A very painful incident, but taught me so much. Taught me that human development is something else than what we talk about. World Bank spends millions of rupees through the government of India for these people, and I went to see whether it's actually benefiting this woman. This woman was, around her were 5 children, from 7 years to 6 months. 3 playing, 2 sleeping, 1 on her hip, and she was cooking. And being the person I was, I said I would like to self-invite myself for lunch. And she gave me 1 roti, 1 chili, an onion, and gravy was just like watery sambar with nothing, little bit of grass in it. It looked like grass, what we think is soap or greens. And this, I asked her, and she told me she doesn't feed her children with it. And the first thought that came to me as a public health person or as a person with human development thinking is, why do you have 7 children? Like any doctor would ask that question. Why didn't you stop with 2? And I asked, why don't you give this gravy to your children? And she said, no, they'll have bloody diarrhea if I give it. And then I realized it's a sharp grass which these adults eat and they are able to digest, but it's the sensitive mucosa of young children, they'll start having bloody diarrhea. So she doesn't give it to them. But look at her situation, 6 children, and husband, income is, he chases lorries loaded with coal, and when they go over a road hump, coal falls out of the truck. He would put it in a bag and go on a cycle behind them, keep collecting it, come back every evening. You would get 10 or 12 kgs of coal. They would sell it in the local black market at 2 rupees a kg, 25 to 30 rupees. That is their daily income. And we are talking of grandiose theories of change and human development. And this lady, I asked her, why do you have 7 children? Her answer was so simple, and she said, the only way I can keep breastfeeding my child, the earlier child, is keep getting pregnant. So my milk now is all the 6 children. And maybe when she's pregnant, she doesn't have enough milk or has no milk, but after then again she starts lactating, but that lactational period is for all the 6 children. And then you ask yourself, what am I doing for such Indians? So when you start really unpacking human development from this perspective, you have to tell the world that their theories of change are flawed. Their theories of understanding blind imitation of consumerist economies in the West is not working. Profit maximization cannot be a way of life. We're destroying the world. Sustainable development goals are just fashion statements of United Nations, not practically implementable because we don't live that. You buy a pair of jeans, it takes 8,000 liters of water. How many young people today have 4 to 5 pairs of jeans? Without even knowing it, 36,000 liters of water is wasted by that person. Can we change ourselves? Can we change our lifestyles? Can we learn from the tribal communities who actually live sustainable development, and we have not learned it? So I put it all together and said, I'm going to share this knowledge, understanding development, understanding public policy from people's perspective, from the citizens' perspective, and what are they doing as an ordinary citizen? And I never thought anybody would read it. In fact, writing the book itself was an accident. One of my classmates at Harvard used to read my blog. I used to write in my blog as an expression of preserving my sanity and anger at the world. I would just write a blog. And it became popular. And this classmate, I never knew she was reading it. She was a very popular Hollywood actor. She was also a classmate, and she came to me and said, Balu, I enjoy your blog and I'm writing a book of my life. She was Ashley Judd, the famous actor, and she said, I want you to also talk to my agent and write this book. This book has to be read by everybody. Put it in a book form. I went and met her agent in New York, and that agent said, you know what, the world is only interested in your leadership thinking. This book nobody is going to read. So very disappointed. I came back to India and forgot about it. But certain friends said, I think it's a great idea. Why don't you just put it as a book? I thought, who's going to read it? Let me just write it and see. So this was 2015. In fact, even the Prime Minister's office released it. A lot of people read it. And I published it, and it became a hit. I never realized it. That means there's hunger for alternate thinking in human development. Then Cornell University Press republished it. Then several universities in the US and UK and every other place took it as a textbook for students to learn. So today, when I use the word human capital, people laughed at me. Today, World Bank 3 years ago invited me to speak about it. And they talk about human capital project. They talk about human capital index. So I'm thinking it's getting into the mainstream language now. People are now recognizing sustainability is not going to happen by profit maximization. People are looking at alternate economies. They're looking at benefit optimization. And I believe COVID is a great teacher. COVID has taught us the vulnerability of mankind. COVID has taught us these models of development have not worked. They now are forcing us to explore. And suddenly there's so much of interest again in what I talk now. And so people are now recognizing that this may be the way to live. And I didn't learn it on my own, or it didn't come as sudden knowledge to me. I learned it from ordinary indigenous tribal communities whom I lived with. So essentially it is their knowledge. I use the power of language and English to put it together as a book. So I must say, that's why my books are all dedicated to them, because it's those chieftains who taught me. Even my leadership book is all mostly lessons I learned from ordinary people, from tribal chieftains and the messages of Gita without knowing the Gita they were living. And I just captured them. So I'm just a passerby who was fortunate to live amongst those people, put it all together. And now I get the credit for it.
I agree with you, Balu, but the thing is, the tagline over here for the masterclass is why be ordinary when you can be extraordinary, and that extraordinary is within you. You have to discover it. Don't go outside to discover. So looking at all the work that you have done, phenomenal work for one person, well, you've really been able to get this movement going, because even if you do not take credit for it, but you've been a catalyst in more ways than one. And I think this is what India needs, people like you being a catalyst to light the fire in many of the youth to be able to move this forward and to take this mission forward. This is what I would say. So if I were to ask you to talk to my viewers, what would the message be to all my viewers? Because my viewers would like to know what is the kind of positive thinking and how would they like to take your message across and live your message?
In simple ways, I think, take pride in the civilizational strength of India. Like what you said, it's not about exploring outside. There are two ways, exploring within ourselves and exploring within the ecosystems that we operate in. And my way of looking at it is 8 powerful lessons that I have learned, either from a scriptural wisdom in this country or from extraordinary people I have met and lived with, which I think are the cardinal principles of spirituality, of human existence, of leadership, whichever way you look. I even say leadership is a spiritual journey, and what India needs is people who can live their life as a sadhana to express this leadership. And 8 qualities. The first quality I would talk about is compassion. Without compassion, there is no humanity left at all. Second is faith and hope, enormous faith that you can be the change, and hope that tomorrow is going to be better. We always cry, complain and criticize. Let's throw it aside and believe that we can do something, and we can actually do it, and believe that tomorrow is going to be better. The third is spirit of positivism. Instead of sitting in a corner and crying about things will not happen, let's just live the positive life. Be a positive emotional activator. Let's spread satsang and positivism around us. Fourth, the spirit of service. India celebrates Seva, service. The Western world understands it as help, but we don't help people because help is transactional. Help is an expectation of something in return, but we serve. Serving people with the spirit of God in man is an extraordinary Indian contribution, Indian thought, and we have to live that. The next is, like Vivekananda says, or what the Vedas says, abhihi, 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 fearlessness. We are not just courageous people. We need to learn to transcend fear itself. And this expression of transcending fear is an extraordinary opportunity. Sense of humor. Let's laugh a lot more. Not laughing at people, that's what we tend to do, but laughing with people. This world needs a lot more laughter. A world which is polarized, a world which is so filled with hatred and enmity. If we can just learn to laugh with people and take them along, I think the world will surely be a better place. And finally, practicing mindfulness. Hinduism and Buddhism is so full of practice of mindfulness. Can we be mindful of whether we are compassionate? Can we be mindful of whether we are practicing the spirit of service, the sense of humor? And the last and the most spiritual message is exercising self-inquiry. Like Ramana Maharishi tells, just one question can be the philosophy of our lives. Who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? What is my contribution to society? Asking existential questions in the spirit of self-inquiry. If we can practice this is what India has taught us, and if we can practice this, we can not only be romantic about the past of India, but we can actually create a great future India. And that would be my message for all the young people.
So, Thank you, Dr. Balu. It has been so wonderful listening to you. It's almost mesmerizing that we should hear this from you, because the youth today need a direction. They're confused because of the kind of noise that is there in the political system today. And we need more such people like yourselves to actually get across to them, because this constant kind of hammering of this kind of nature, people will sit back and think, because you said COVID was good. I would say COVIDity is positivity. And I would say that that's the best thing that's happened to me, because the masterclass came out of COVID. Because I said, what will I do for that little extra time that I have at home? And I thought that this was the best way that I could actually engage with the people. And people thought, why is Kamini Rao doing this? She's only a doctor. So people start to cage you into one particular thing, and you have to be an evolved person. And an evolved person must be free to do whatever, 360 degrees. And I think this is actually helping a lot of people. And that creativity that I see in you, bringing institutions into a kind of forest area, it's a challenge, believe me, and I think there will be a lot more people wanting to come and join your organizations, and I hope that a lot more people will be recognizing you and this organization becomes even more successful, because this is what we need for India. So this is Dr. Kamini Rao's masterclass. Another great person. I'm sure all of you loved Dr. Balu's expose on rural development, human index development, and also on the social service. I'm sure a lot of messages have got across to you. We'd like your feedback. Please let us know. So till then, until my next masterclass, see you then. Welcome to this episode of Dr. Kamini Rao's Masterclass. Acting is magical. Change your look and your attitude and you can be anyone, says Alicia Witt. In today's masterclass, let me take the pleasure to introduce the man popularly known as an actor with no failures by the critics themselves. Welcome to the show, Mr. Anantnag.
Thank you.